Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Okay, so if you're just seeing my video for the first time, you're welcome. My name is Stella. Alright, so in my previous video, I drafted an armhole princess dart. Okay, so let's jump right into the alteration to the asymmetric neckline. Okay, so let's proceed. Now the first thing we need to do, okay, is to tighten our back further, okay, just so that it sits well on the waistline. Now to do that, from the center back, we'll go up by 0.5. Okay, I'm going up by 0.5 like so. Then I'll go ahead and connect that to my side back. Okay, now the essence of this is to ensure that we will not have any form of bulge at that center back line. Okay, now to do this, we will need to close our dart. Okay, this is a temporal measure, so you will try and lift out okay, so you try and lift up your dart leg. Okay, so you lift one of them and you place it on the other. Okay, you just try, because remember the paper is on fold, so it may be a bit thick. So you lift one of your dart legs, okay, and you place it on the second one. Now I'll come in with my ruler, with my straight line, okay, and then I'll try to connect from that 0.5 that we came up on the center back line, okay, to the side back, okay, like so. Now, like I told us, this is to make sure that the skirt sits perfectly at the back, okay. Now, and that is it, we are done. Okay, so that's our new waistline for the back. Now I'll go ahead and cut. Okay, so we need to first separate the front and the back patterns. Okay, now remember I had earlier pinned so that the pattern doesn't shift, so I'm trying to take off my pins. Okay, so I'll separate my front and my back pattern like so, and then I'm also cutting out the center line, okay, the center dart, so that I will close my bust dart. Remember that we have not closed our bust dart. Okay, so I just cut. Now it's very easy to close our bust dart. Okay, so just lift up your dart, the line that we measured, and just place it on the bust point line like I just did. Now, and I'll come in with my tape, okay, and I'll hold that down firmly so that it doesn't open again. Now, you remember our allowances, okay, our 0.5. Now, it's time for us to connect it back, okay. Our 0.5 that we used to tighten the dart legs, okay, and the 0.5 that we used on the under bust. Now, I'll go ahead and connect that, okay. So, my side front is complete now and ready, okay, and that's it for the front. Now, I'll go ahead and cut out my pieces. Okay, and like I told us, the curve, sometimes when you close your bust dart, you may need to reshape, but I like the curve. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and cut out all my pieces. Just watch the lines that I'm cutting, because it's also very important. Okay, so we'll cut, and that's it. So this is our side front. We will label later. You guys know I like to label. Okay, so I'm cutting out my center front now. Remember our neckline that we came down with by 0.5, so that's our new armhole, that's our new shoulder line. Okay, so that's it. Our side front and our center front is ready. Now, most times when I cut out, I like to match it, okay, to be sure that it's the same, okay, to be sure that it's equal. All right, so that's it for the front. Now let's proceed to the back. So I'll cut on our new waistline for the back. Okay, now that's it. My side back is ready. We will still label all these patterns because they are very important. Now I'll proceed to cut out my center back piece. Okay, and that's it. Our back pieces, they are ready. Now it's time for us to label. So that's our side back. We'll call it SB. Okay, now we're labeling the two pieces. Remember that the pattern was on fold before we started drafting. Now that's our center back, so I'll call it my CB. Okay, and then the lower part is our waistline for the back, and that's it for the back. Now we'll proceed to shaping the back, the side back further. Okay, now I like to do this because if you don't take off that tiny excess there, okay, when you're done fixing it, sewing it down, you will notice a little bit of bulging and your back is supposed to be flat. Okay, so I decided to take that off so that we can see the process now. And that's it. You find out that when you're done joining, it's going to be perfect and flat. Okay, and that's it for the back. We're done. Now we'll proceed to the front. Okay, so we'll proceed to the front. Now, the first thing I like to do is to notch my lines. So I'm going ahead to notch my underbust line, okay, my bust point line. Now my bust point, I like to give it a little bit of a cut, okay. Then I will go ahead and label. So I'm labeling my side front, okay. So that's my SF. Now these labels, they are very important when it's time for you to transfer to fabric. Okay, now I'll try and match up my patterns to be sure that they are equal. Okay, this is very important so that when it's time for me to join my fabric, I will not have any form of excess. Now I noticed that mostly with armhole princess, that when you're done, there is usually this tiny piece that is excess just towards the armhole. Okay, so I will go ahead and mark that. It's very small, it's less than 0.25, but like I told us, I like to work with exact. Okay, so I'll just come in with my curve and I'll try to reshape my armhole just to take off that tiny excess there. Okay, so I'll place my curve like so and I'll just try and reshape my armhole. Now that's what I'm trying to take off may look small, but I just don't want to have any form of excess. Okay, so I'll go ahead and cut that off and that's it. Okay, so that's it. My side front is ready. Now if you try and rematch the pattern, you can see that it's now equal. Okay, so I'll go ahead and take off my pins so that we can spread open our pattern. Now that's it, our pattern is wide open now, so we'll jump right into the alteration of the asymmetric neckline. Okay, so here's our pattern. That's the side front pieces. Okay, so let's jump right into the alteration. Now remember our initial neckline of 3x3. The first thing we will do now is to come in by 1 inch. Okay, so from the 3x3 we will extend our neckline with 1 inch, okay, or 1.1. I decided to just make use of the next point after 1 inch, which is 1.1. okay, so that's how wide I want the neckline to be. And now I'll go ahead and connect it to the mid front. Okay, now again, the next thing is for you to decide how low you want your neckline. So for my clients, I want her neck depth to be 4.5 inches. Okay, now I've marked that. So from the 4.5 inches I came down with to my chest line, what I have there is 2 inches. Okay, now I'll go ahead and mark that because I want to have a straight line. Okay, so I'll use my ruler to connect to that point. Okay, remember her neck depth for the front is 4.5 inches. Okay, now from the center front, okay, I will go inwards by 1.25. okay, you remember that if you look at the picture, you can see that the neckline is not straight. Okay, so from the mid front, now that's our mid front. Okay, so that's our center front line. I'm just trying to highlight that with pencil. Now I will go in by 1.25 away from the center line because I want to slant the neckline. Okay, then I'll make a mark there. Now I'll come in with my ruler. So I'm connecting from the 1 inch mark that we marked on the neckline to the 1.25 that we marked. Okay, and here it is. So we've slanted our neckline. Now the next thing we will do is on the armhole line, okay, you come down by 4 inches and you make a mark there. Now, I don't want the neckline to reveal her cleavage, okay? So from the armhole, I came down by 4 inches, and I'm going to come in with my ruler, okay, or my curve, whatever you want, depends on the shape you want. So I'm using a slight curve to connect to that 4 inches mark by the armhole, okay? Now, like I said, the shape depends on you. If you want yours straight, that's okay, but this is the style I want, okay? And that's it. You can see that the alteration did not enter our side front pieces, okay? So I will go ahead and cut this out. Okay, so I decided to give it a little curve, okay, just to ensure that her cleavage is not going to show at all, okay? Now I placed my curve a bit up and I just connected back to that 4 inches we came down with, okay? So I'll go ahead now and cut out. Now, and that's it. So our front pattern is ready. Now we'll proceed to the back to alter the back neckline. So the first thing I need to do is to take off my pins, okay? Then I'll go ahead and join the two center back pieces, okay? So I'll use my tape my masking tape, okay, or any paper tape you have. I'll go ahead and join my center back pieces, okay, so that we can proceed with the alteration. And here it is, I've joined it. Now we'll go ahead and bring our front piece that we have altered, okay? So this is how it's going to look. Now, however I'm placing it now, this is how I will place it on my fabric, okay? So you choose the side you want your slant to face, but for me, this is how I want mine, okay? So I'm arranging my pieces. Now this is it, okay? This is how it's going to appear on the fabric. But since our alteration is not entering the side pieces, so I decided to take that aside, okay? So let's focus on the center front and the center back, okay? So I have my center front on the center back line because I need the slant to face the same direction, okay? Now I'll come in with my ruler, okay? Now the first thing we need to do is to align your shoulder. Ensure that the two shoulders are equal, and then you make a mark there, okay? So you can also go ahead and measure your neckline, measure the 1 inch that we came out on the front, but just go ahead and align your neckline. Sorry, go ahead and align your shoulders like I just did, okay? Now, from the armhole line of the back piece, okay, so I came down by 3.5 inches. I want the back to be a bit up. Remember, we came down by 4 inches for the front. Now, for the back, I came down by 3.5 inches, okay? Now, I'm going to use a straight line to connect to our neckline, okay? So I'll connect like so using a straight line. You can use a curve ruler if you want yours to be curvy, but I want mine to be straight. So I'm connecting with a straight line, okay? And here it is. Our back has been altered, okay? So I'll go ahead and cut that off. Okay, so we will cut, and that's it. Now this is what we have. Our back is ready. Now it's time for us to label so that it will guide us when we are placing on the fabric, okay? So I'm assuming that the side facing me is the right side of the fabric. So I'm writing, I'll go ahead and write, okay? That's the right side of the fabric, okay? I'll write this same thing on all the pieces. Now this is very important because when you're working with an asymmetric neckline, okay, or a slanted neckline, you need to be very careful. If not, you end up with the slants facing opposite direction, and that's not what you want. Okay, so I've labeled. Now, so the right side of the front piece is facing me, and the right side of the back is also facing the table. Okay, so I'm assuming this paper to be my fabric. Okay, so this is it. Our pattern set is ready. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pin down my patterns. I'll assemble them. Okay, and if possible, I will write the name of the client. Now, these details are very important. Okay, so if you look at the style too, it has a tiny yoke. Okay, now from the center front, from our 1.25 inches that we came out with, okay, from the center front, I will go away by 1 inch. That's where I want my front yoke to start. So I'm marking 1 inch away from the center front, okay, and then from the armhole line, I'm also coming in by 1 inch. Okay, I want the yoke to be sleeveless, so I'll go ahead and connect this. Now, I like to write on my pattern. Okay, so I'm transferring the marks on the yoke to the main center front. Okay, so that when it's time for me to join the fabric, I will not start guessing. Okay, so I'm transferring my markings to the center front piece. Okay, then I'm also writing that I came out, I moved away by 1 inch. Okay, now from the armhole as well, I'm also writing the 1 inch that I moved away from. Okay, now these details are very important. Okay, and that's it. So we'll go ahead and connect our yoke. Okay, so I'm slanting. I want my yoke to be a bit slanted, so I'm connecting it with a straight line. Okay, so the yoke, I want the width of my yoke to be 2.9 inches. I don't want it 2.9 or 3 inches, so I don't want it super wide, so I chose 2.9 inches. Okay, so I'll go ahead and use my ruler to connect my points upward using a slant line. Okay, it's not straight. Now you can make yours straight, it depends on your choice of your yoke. Okay, so remember I told us that the width of the yoke is 2.9 inches. Now I'll go ahead and use my ruler to connect that. Okay, and that's it. Our yoke for the front is ready. Then I'll go ahead and write the width of my yoke, which is 2.9 inches. Okay, then I'll go ahead and I'll cut out my yoke like so. Okay, and that's it. Our front yoke is ready. Okay, now I'll just pin down my pieces, okay, so that I don't start looking for it. Now on the main fabric, this is how I'll be placing it. Remember, 1 inch away from the center front slanted neckline. Okay, now, and that's it. So I will pin that down so that I don't get to look for any of the pieces. Okay, and then we'll proceed to alter the back yoke. But before we do that, I like to write the direction. Okay, so that's the center front. Okay, so when I'm folding on my tool net, I'll make that unfold. Okay, and that's my armhole side. Okay, now the top part is my shoulder line. Now, so that when I'm transferring to my yoke, to my tool net, I will not start guessing where it's facing where. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pin down all my pieces and I'll keep it aside. Then we'll proceed to alter the back yoke. Okay, so I've separated my center back. Now we'll go ahead and label as well. Remember when we were shaping our neckline, I told us that this is the right side of the fabric. So I'll go ahead and write it. Okay, so that's the right side of the fabric. Now I'll go ahead and label all the parts. Okay, all the side pieces. I'll label them right side of the fabric so that when I'm transferring to the fabric, I already know where they will face. Okay, now this is very important so that you don't go ahead and mix up your patterns, because you can easily mix up your patterns. Okay, now I'm labeling them, okay, for clarity purpose. So let's proceed. So we'll go ahead and alter the yoke. Okay, now this is the yoke. Okay, so you remember our markings on the front yoke. Okay, so let's proceed. Now you remember that the front yoke, from the armhole side, we went in by 1 inch. Okay, I told us that I want the yoke to be sleeveless, so repeat the same thing on the back yoke as well. So I'm going in by 1 inch from the armhole line. Okay, and I'll also mark the same on the yoke itself. Okay, now I told us that the width of the yoke is 2.9 inches, so I'll go ahead and measure that out as well. Okay, then I'll simply connect using a straight line. Okay, so you can make yours slanted because it's not a straight line. Okay, and that's it. Our back yoke is ready. Now I'll go ahead and cut this out. Okay, so and here we have it. So this is our back yoke. Now on my fabric, this is how it's going to appear. Okay, so and that's it. I'll also go ahead and pin all my back pieces together. Okay, and you can also go ahead and label the patterns. Okay, so you don't mix them up. Now the next thing we'll do is to transfer it to fabric, and I'll show us. All right, so I've gone ahead to transfer the pattern pieces to my fabric. Okay, so this is the front, this is the center front piece. Okay, now I transferred it and I added 0.5 inch round. Okay, so I cut it on my velvet, and I also used a doll face bridal satin as my lining. Now I also went ahead to iron down interfacing, and in this case I used hairstay. Okay, so now when you're cutting your lining, you make sure that you place them right size facing each other before you cut out. If not, when you cut out, you find out that the lining may be facing the other side, and that's not what you want. So always ensure that your fabrics, they are facing, that their right sides are facing each other before you cut out the lining. Okay, and that's it. This is the center front. Now I also cut out my side front. Okay, now I iron down my hairstay on all the pieces, both the fabric and lining. Okay, so these are the center front, these are the side front pieces. Okay, so I added my allowance. I added 1/2 inch allowance round. Okay, then for the side seam allowance, I added 2 inches. Okay, so and that's it. I also went ahead to mark my 0.5 okay stitch line. Now I like to mark out my stitch line so that I will be sure I'm working with exact. Now on your underbust line, you will need to give it a little bit of notch, okay, so that when you're joining, it will be easier for you, okay, to join the curvy area. Now and that's it. So this is my center back piece, okay, and this is also the lining. Now I added 1 inch as for my zip allowance. Okay, you can use 1/2 inch, but I'm already used to using 1 inch for my zip allowance. Okay, so I added that on the main fabric and on the lining. Now I went ahead to mark it out. Okay, so I used my pencil to mark out my 1 inch zip allowance. Okay, and that's it. So this is the center back piece, okay, and that's the lining, which is also a doll face bridal satin. Now here are the side pieces for the back as well. Okay, now I cut that out using my the numberings. Okay, and I also added 0.5 joining allowance round, and for the side back I added 2 inches sewing allowance as well. Okay, now that's the second side back. Okay, so that's it. Now I wanted to point out something to us that is very important. Now remember that when we were drafting, when we finished, I labeled the patterns. Okay, I labeled them right side, okay, according to the way we placed them, and we altered the neckline. Okay, now when I was also cutting the back side, okay, the back pieces, I placed the my pattern on top of the right side of the fabric like so, and I cut out. Now the essence of this is so that at the end of the day your slants will face the same direction, okay, because you know that eventually it's going to appear this way. Okay, your slants for the front and the back will appear exactly like this. Now if you don't place your pattern the same way you cut out, okay, you will end up with your slant, maybe the back slant, the back neckline may be facing the shoulder of the front, and that's not what you want. So I place my patterns on the right side of the fabric, okay, and I cut out. Now you can place on the wrong side, but just be mindful of the direction of your neckline. Okay, now that's it. So let's proceed with the joining process. Now the first thing we need to do is to mark your zip allowance. So I've marked mine is 1 inch, so I marked it on the main fabric and on the lining piece as well. Okay, so I'll take that to my sewing machine and I'll use a loose stitch to stitch it down. Now after I'm done, I'll take it to my pressing table and I'll press it open using my my pressing iron, and I also take off the stitches. Now the essence is for me to see the crease line when it's time for me to fix my zip. Now I'll also go ahead and join my side pieces, okay, using my 0.5. I've marked that out. I like to mark out my seam lines, okay, so that I don't sew on maybe more than the 0.5 allowance. Okay, so I like to mark out my seam lines. So I'll go ahead and join my side pieces both on the fabric and on the lining, and I will press open. Okay, now when you're stitching the side, you can go ahead and give it tiny notches around that curvy area, okay, so that it will come out flat when you're done. Now I'll also go ahead and join my front pieces. Okay, I have also marked my 0.5 round it, so I'll join my front pieces, the fabric, the main fabric to the center front. Okay, and I'll also join my lining pieces as well. Then I'll press. I know why I'm emphasizing, so I'll press my seam lines open. Okay, and you can go ahead and trim off when you're done pressing, but sometimes I don't know, I just leave it. But you can trim that off just to ensure that that place sits well, okay, and is smooth. And that's the right thing to do. When you're done stitching down, you trim off. Okay, now this is our yoke. Okay, so you remember our labels on it, so I went ahead to cut it on fold. Okay, and I added my 1/2 inch, so I have my 1/2 inch down here, okay, and the side. I also have my 1/2 inch on the shoulder line. Now this is the front piece and this is the back piece of the yoke as well. I also have my 1/2 inch all around it, okay, except the side that is facing the center back because it's on fold. So the first thing to do is to join it on the shoulder. Okay, I'll join the front and the back yoke on the shoulder using the 0.5 allowance there. Now I'll join it and press it, then I'll go ahead and fold it into two and I'll join the sides, so at the end of the day it becomes a single yoke. Okay, now I'll go ahead and stitch down, press, then I'll show us what next. All right, so here we have it. I have joined my pieces. Okay, so this is the back piece, that's the lining. Okay, and that's the lining for the front as well. Okay, you can see my stitch lines are well pressed. Okay, now this is the main fabric, so this is the front. Now I went ahead um to use pins, okay, to pin down the bra cup. Okay, now you place your bra cup on the underbust line, just you slant it a bit and then you pin. But you first need to mark your center line. Okay, now from the center line you go away by 0.25, okay, for on the left and 0.25 on the right. So you place your bra cup after that 0.25 mark. Okay, so and that's it. So just go ahead and pin down. Now I will go ahead and tack the bra cup. Okay, I'll tack it on the interfacing and not on the velvet. Now this is also the back piece, okay, of the main fabric. You can see how flat is laying, okay, because I pressed it down. And that's it. Okay, so we'll go ahead now. Okay, so I also went ahead to mark my shapings. Okay, now how I shape, a perfect example. So I will first measure the bust. Okay, so I measure the bust on the back fabric and I measure the bust on the front fabric. Now let's assume that I got 25 inches, okay, for the bust on the back fabric and 25 inches for the bust on the front. Now I'll add that, okay, and that will give me 50, and her exact bust round is 43. Okay, now if you subtract 43, now I also like to add 1 inch ease, okay, so it doesn't become excessively tight. So if you subtract 43 from if you subtract 44 from 50, that will give you 6. So I'll go ahead and divide my 6 into 4. That will give me 1.5. So I'll mark that on all the sides. Okay, and that's it. So we'll go ahead now with our joinings. Now that's the skirt part. Okay, so that's the skirt part of the front. Okay, so I'll go ahead and join them on the waistline using 0.5. Okay, you remember our allowance, so I'll join the front. I've also tacked down my bra cup. Okay, so I'll also bring in my my back pieces as well. Okay, now we're working with the main fabric first, so I'll align them like so. Okay, then I'll go ahead and join them on the waistline using my 0.5. You remember that we've not fixed our zip. Okay, so after I join, I'll go ahead and fix my zip, and that's it. Okay, so here are the pieces. I went ahead to join the main fabric complete. Okay, and I also joined the lining complete as well. Now I'll go ahead and use the lining to turn the neckline. Okay, I'll use the lining to turn the neckline of the main fabric. Okay, and I'll also use it to turn the zip area. Okay, and that's it. We are done. Okay, so I'm done turning it. I also went ahead to fix our yoke. Okay, and this dress is looking lovely. Now you can see the bust area, the stitches that we used to hold down the bra cup is not showing because I passed the needle through the interfacing. Okay, and that's it. So this is the lower part of the dress. Okay, I just love the feel of the satin inside. Is very comfortable. Now we'll go ahead and join and cut out our off-shoulder sleeve. Okay, if you look at the picture, you can see that one of the sleeves is an off-shoulder sleeve. Now I want the sleeve length to be 13 inches. Okay, but you remember that when we were drafting our pattern, we subtracted 4 inches. We went down by 4 inches from the armhole of the front. Okay, now if you subtract 4 inches from 13, that will give us 9. Okay, now I'll go ahead and cut out. Okay, so my first step, the long step is 9 inches, and the second one I want the spacing to be 3.5 inches. Okay, so I went ahead to cut that out. So right now I have 2 pieces of fabric is measuring 31 inches. Okay, that's the length. Okay, so it's the same length for both the first step of the sleeve and the second step. Okay, now I told us that the gap, the spacing in between, okay, is 3.5 inches. Now I will go ahead and stitch them down. Okay, I'll join both of them down using my sewing machine. Okay, I'll stitch it down like so, and I'll come back and show us. Now, before I join, I will extend the shorter piece of fabric, okay, upward by 1.5 inches, because if you join the two fabrics at the same length and you fold to pass your elastic, that place is going to be very thick, and that's not what you want. It may be a bit uncomfortable for the person to wear. So I will extend the shorter fabric upward by 1.5 inches. Okay, then so that when we are done stitching the two of them down, I will go ahead and trim off the excess. Okay, so I'll take this to my sewing machine and I'll stitch down. Okay, then I'll come back and show us. All right, so here we have it. I have stitched down. Okay, now you can see the way I stitched down. Now the shorter length is longer, okay, because I extended it upwards like I explained for us. Now I'll go ahead and use my scissors to trim off the excess. You can see me holding the excess. Okay, so I'm leaving only one layer, okay, from the shorter length, which I will use to fold. Okay, now I've trimmed off the other excess. Okay, so I am left with just one layer. Now I'll take this to my sewing machine and I'll fold. Okay, so I'm basically forming like a casing for the elastic. So I'll fold, then pass the elastic through, and I'll fix my sleeve. So that's it, guys. I went ahead to cut out the second sleeve as well, and I fixed. This dress is looking beautiful. So I also draped on it, and the draping process is super easy, but I just didn't want the video to be unnecessarily too long. Okay, but if you want any form of clarity on that, I'll be more than grateful to answer your questions. Okay, and that's it. So I went ahead to attach my applique on the dress just to step it up a bit. Okay, and I love this dress. Okay, from the color of the velvet to the lace to the design is super beautiful. Okay, I'd like you guys to try out this method. Okay, and you can let me know in the comment section what you think. Okay, if you encountered any challenge while you were at it, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. All right, guys, so kindly subscribe to my channel if you have not. Okay, hit on the like button, and I'll see you in my subsequent video. Okay, bye.